In 2009, when my son turned 2, my wife had to return to work because my primary job wasn't bringing in enough income. I had already lost my business and any extra earnings the year before, in 2008. She resented me for not being able to maintain the lifestyle we once had, and she clearly had no interest in going back to work herself. According to her, this was the main cause of her depression and the strain in our relationship. However, it turned out that the change of scenery actually did her some good, just not when it came to us. As it often happens with stay-at-home moms, especially those blessed with good looks, she found herself in a new environment where the attention from men was constant. She started soaking up the admiration and the glow of feeling attractive again. Naturally, this led to her becoming more focused on her appearance. Beauty salons, tanning sessions, and a wardrobe full of new clothes. After all, she worked at a bank, interacting with people, and felt she needed to look polished at all times. Soon she was spending her evenings glued to social media. Just a month after they started working, they had a corporate party, and it wasn't easy to get her out of there. She was very drunk and didn't want to leave. I sat in the car for 2 hours, returning repeatedly to try to convince her to get out. Soon after, she bought herself an additional SAM card, claiming that it was cheaper to keep in touch with her sister. I am preparing for a business trip, which is only a month away. I'm sitting and packing my things while my wife is in the shower and my son is sleeping. And then a text message comes. "Hello, my love. Do you want to go for a walk tomorrow night?" From an unknown number. I don't usually check her phone, but it was lying next to me, and I instinctively picked it up and read it. I was stunned. Without thinking, I dialed the number. The call was dropped. I tried again, but the phone was already turned off. I lost my temper. I kicked down the bathroom door, which is not physically difficult for me, and shoved this message in her face, asking, "What the hell is this?" She began to stutter, unable to explain anything. There were no words. I ran out of the house and spent the night at the hotel. By morning, she started cutting off my phone, calling me a fool. She stated that it was a message from her sister, and she just sometimes calls her beloved. She even insisted that I dial the number again to check, which I did, and of course her sister replied, confirming everything. Later I will tell you how it all happened. This happened about 4 months after the first incident. During that whole time, our relationship was rocky, especially when it came to intimacy. Every time I tried to talk to her, to understand what was going on, she'd just say she didn't know. She'd tell me she loved me but didn't feel like doing anything, and it wasn't about me, more about her. In short, she was confused and didn't know what she wanted. Then she lost her old job when the bank branch she worked for shut down. She ended up moving into retail and often worked late. Sometimes I'd pick her up, but most nights she'd get home on her own, or the store owner would give her a lift, though that didn't happen often. Meanwhile, I was left taking care of our son. Sometimes my wife returned from work late, often accompanied by female colleagues. I've seen it more than once when I picked her up. One evening, when I was waiting for her on the balcony, I noticed a car approaching. In the dark, it looked very much like her boss's car. But instead of stopping at the entrance as usual, she parked about 100 meters away, at the end of the neighboring building. I tried to call her, but the phone was turned off. After waiting another 15 minutes, I saw my wife jump out of the car, slam the door with obvious irritation, and burst into the building. When I asked her what was going on, she snapped that it was none of my business. The next day, she told me that she was quitting her job because her boss, like all the girls in the office, was stalking her. That evening, her boss gave her an ultimatum: resign without a bonus or face further harassment. I dealt with it later, but that's a different story. In addition, he had put her in an awkward position from the very beginning, demanding that she flirt and behave provocatively if she wanted to keep her job. Case 3. She landed a new job, and things at home started to improve. However, I still had this nagging feeling that she might be cheating on me, or at least flirting dangerously close to infidelity. A month and 3 months later, we had a conversation where she asked if I was considering divorcing her. I told her that I had been contemplating it for the past 6 months, but wanted to keep our family together for our son's sake. I also had my own issues to deal with at the time. Then she asked if I had been unfaithful, and I said no. She then asked why I didn't question her about her own fidelity. When I asked, she admitted she had cheated once. I took the news relatively calmly, though it did explain some of her recent behavior. I didn't speak to her for a week. We coexisted like strangers. When we finally talked, she offered explanations for everything that had happened. First, she admitted that the text message wasn't from her sister, as she had claimed. It was actually from a work colleague she'd developed feelings for. To cover this up, they'd used her sister's SIM card to mislead me. She also mentioned that her sister had been misled about her behavior. According to her, she had been involved in a flirtation with this colleague, which evolved into a romantic relationship. She probably would have slept with him, but I intercepted her messages in time, and the plans fell through due to my business trip and then the layoffs. Additionally, my attempt to call the number when it wasn't answered, and its disconnection at midnight, didn't escape his wife's notice. Secondly, at her new job, she did face harassment from her boss. Initially, she was flattered by his attention, but things took a turn when he began demanding intimacy. During this time, she also received a lot of attention from male clients, including a wealthy man 10 years older than me, who started pursuing her. He even invited her to his apartment for lunch. Things progressed during one of those lunches. She told me she was deeply remorseful and couldn't understand what had driven her during those months of working. She described it as an obsession and promised it wouldn't happen again, crying and begging for my forgiveness. We agreed that she would remove all signs of attention from her social networks, delete any contacts from her phone, and never act in such a way again. That seemed to settle things. Case 4. I didn't fully trust her. Trust isn't exactly my strong suit, so I installed tracking software on my computer to monitor everything. What she viewed, what she wrote, and how. I also regularly printed out records of her phone communications. 2 weeks after her confession, on February 23, I discovered that she had sent a holiday greeting to him on social media. I found out the next day, thanks to some deductive work and a bit of help from law enforcement, which allowed me to trace his number from her call history. After the argument, she called him, apparently to sort things out. I called him too. He was pretty arrogant, but I made it clear where I stood. Then I found his wife on the same site and sent her a short message outlining everything that had happened. Soon after, both he and his wife disappeared from the platform. I decided that I wasn't going to be the only one to shoulder this burden of truth. I think he called my wife right away, and she rushed home from work to explain herself. She once again insisted that there was nothing between us, claiming that she just wished him a happy holiday as an acquaintance. After that, I decided that there was no point in being faithful to someone who behaved like that. I quickly filed for divorce and decided to start life from scratch.